Hello and welcome to our channel. Today we're going to talk about one of the most mysterious and tragic disappearances of the 1980s. Dorothy Scott's disappearance remains an unsolved mystery that has lingered for years. In May of 1980, at just 32 years old, Dorothy vanished after leaving work and was never seen again. But what followed her disappearance is even more chilling. Anonymous phone calls, threatening messages, and a mysterious murder. All of this leaves behind nothing but questions. Dorothy Jane Scott was born in 1957 in California, USA. She was a beloved member of her family, always devoted to them, particularly her young son. From an early age, Dorothy led a very quiet life. She was a diligent student throughout high school, and after graduating, she began working as an accountant. Her family believed she would lead a peaceful and ordinary life. In the late 1970s, she started working as an accountant at a construction company in Santa Ana. She was a dedicated and loyal individual who supported her family. Over time, she made new friends at work. However, there was one person who always stayed close to her, especially during difficult nights. Her devotion to her son was one of the most important aspects of her life. Yet little did she know, her life would soon change in an unexpected and tragic way. On the night of May 24, 1980, Dorothy had planned to meet one of her friends for dinner after work. It had been a busy day, but she still kept her promise and set off. She got in her car and headed for a local restaurant in Santa Ana, planning to meet her friend. The atmosphere inside the restaurant seemed normal at first. But that evening, a man approached Dorothy and began to disturb her. The man started talking about Dorothy's past relationships and her private life, which made her visibly uncomfortable. Dorothy decided to leave the restaurant quickly. At around 11 p.m., she left. As she drove home, little did she know that her life would take a dark turn that night. Was it just a coincidence that she vanished, or was someone following her? At first, her family wasn't too worried. However, when Dorothy failed to return home, things began to feel off. Dorothy, who was always so punctual, had gone missing, and soon the alarm was raised. After Dorothy vanished, something even more chilling began to happen. Anonymous phone calls. For an entire week, Dorothy's phone received strange calls every single day. The caller never revealed their identity but left disturbing messages. "I'll find you and I'll be with you," the messages said, turning into a nightmare. These messages were sent not only to Dorothy but also to her family and friends. No one could figure out who this person was. The police and Dorothy's family tried to solve the mystery behind her disappearance, but the phone calls only grew more terrifying. The caller continued to make calls not just on the day Dorothy went missing but for weeks afterward. Each time, no one could identify who was on the other end of the line. For an entire month after Dorothy's disappearance, no one could find out what had happened to her. By 1984, 4 years had passed since Dorothy's disappearance, and her family had still found no leads. But that year, something unexpected happened. In July 1984, a group of construction workers discovered a body while working along a desert road. The body was in a severely decomposed state, making identification difficult. However, the location where the body was found was very close to the area where Dorothy had gone missing, which sent a wave of dread through her family. After the body was discovered, tests and investigations were conducted. Eventually, it was confirmed that the body belonged to Dorothy. The location where the body was found was not far from the spot where Dorothy had disappeared. But the discovery of her body did not bring any sense of closure. There was still no clear answer as to how she had died. The years, the phone calls, and the unanswered questions, all of them kept the mystery alive. Given the condition of the body, it appeared that her death had occurred only recently. But the fact that her body had been found in a remote desert road raised even more questions. Even after Dorothy's disappearance, the anonymous phone calls never ceased. They became so complicated and disturbing that some calls were almost perceived as direct threats. By the time her body was found in 1984, her family began to recall the anonymous phone calls Dorothy had received at the time of her disappearance. Especially after the discovery of her body, efforts to uncover the identity of the caller intensified, but they still led to no conclusion. Investigations into Dorothy's death revealed that the phone calls played a significant role in her life during those final years. The calls were consistently threatening, and there was a sense that someone was constantly watching Dorothy. Who was this person? Where were they coming from? And why, during the final years of Dorothy's life, did they seem to follow her every move? The police were unable to gather much evidence regarding the caller. The caller never revealed their identity. The mysterious phone calls became a haunting memory in relation to Dorothy's disappearance. These calls were not merely voicemails, they were psychological torment, perhaps even a form of harassment. The calls continued regularly with the same disturbing voice, yet despite all the police efforts, no breakthrough was ever made. Dorothy Scott's disappearance remains a haunting mystery that still affects many to this day. To this day, the circumstances surrounding her disappearance and death have never been solved. Several theories have been proposed. The first theory suggests that Dorothy's disappearance was linked to a past relationship and that someone from that relationship was trying to intimidate her with repeated phone calls. The second theory suggests that Dorothy's disappearance wasn't just a random event. Some people believe that there was psychological manipulation involved. In this theory, Dorothy's disappearance and the events leading up to her death were all part of a planned sequence. Another theory posits that Dorothy was targeted by a random perpetrator the night she vanished. However, the location of her body and the chilling mystery behind the phone calls always hint at something darker. Dorothy had been stalked and somehow targeted by someone. Dorothy Scott's disappearance has become an unsolved mystery that will forever be part of history. The events following her disappearance, with the increasing fear and threatening phone calls, only made the case more complicated. Yet even years later, no one has ever discovered exactly why or how it happened. This tragic disappearance has left behind only questions. Despite years of searching, Dorothy's family never got to learn the truth. Perhaps one day this mystery will be solved, but for now, Dorothy Scott's disappearance remains trapped within the unknown.